Good. And good.
Yeah,
Good.
back here.
All right, welcome to another edition of Economic Development Committee for Staff Booth. Call to order, first approval of agenda for today. Approve.
Yeah.
Yes, move. I need a motion.
Okay, motion to approve.
Second, yeah, good. All in favor, aye, great.
Aye.
We're moving right along. And Jim was here to correct it.
Yeah.
Minutes from last meeting. Okay. Any comments? Motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Public comment. Do we have any public comment today, MJ?
Not today, no.
Right, well then we're moving right along to new business. So we have the most recent draft of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. We'd like to put a bow on this. So at this point, it's a open forum of what, if anything else, should be added, changed, addressed in this report before it gets kind of, what would you say happened, then, Jay? It basically gets approved by us and it goes in front of council as a document for their use?
Yeah, no, and I envision this ending with some kind of presentation, Carl, probably between you and Christine to the city council. And so, yeah, and like we said from the impetus of this, like this is really for the whole city to be on the same page with what the vision is. It's not like a master plan kind of thing. It's just get everyone talking the same way.
So I guess the question to the committee and anybody in attendance is what, if anything else, needs to be done to this document before that happens?
I have a few questions. I wasn't here last meeting, but I just didn't watch here. And this is for Brian, your appendix E. So you stated in paragraph 3, and you're the expert here, so I kind of just want to pick your brain. That you have vacancies that are not being filled back, 1,500 square foot commercial space.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, why what are the reasons?
So for commercial, I consider commercial to be an equilibrium right now at Scapos, meaning that if you have a tenant and you have a business, most of the businesses here are making a living. Okay, so we don't have a bunch of businesses circling the drain. But we also have a constantly changing economy. And what's happening is some businesses are phasing out of existence. An example of that would be is for many years I had a photography studio in my place. There's no photography studios in Scapos anymore. They're gone. I had a vacancy that I have that's 1,500 square feet. That was rented by Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate. They lost a large lawsuit, and so did a bunch of other large real estate companies. And what resulted is it cost them billions of dollars. And they've been going through the country and closing offices systematically. So we're kind of out of the expansion of real estate services, which is actually, if you think about Scapos, there's quite a few office spaces that have commercial real estate. I mean, not commercial real estate offices. So this one is below. I suspect more will. Because of the lawsuit, these large companies are running. So what happens, you get business formation, but we also have business destruction going on at the same time. And so we're kind of in an equilibrium. Now, the reason that particular space hasn't read it is that it's a beautiful space. In fact, one of my nicest. But the price point is about $2,100 a month. That's including some utilities and surcharges or that kind of garbage that you find in some of the commercial buildings. But the Scapos market, with really when people say we need commercial, what they want is a 500 square foot space or a 700 square foot space for $800 a month. No one's going to build that because you can't make any money at that. I do have spaces those sizes, and they stay rented. And if they go vacant, they get rented fairly quickly. But once you get into anything over $1,000 a month in rent, in Scapos, it becomes so much more difficult to rent anything. And so that is kind of the situation we're in. We're in a situation where we have new business formation, but we have some businesses, timing out as far as having a storefront. And then simultaneously, we have people under financial constraint, people, work from home for a lot of businesses. I use an architect who works out of his house. 30 years ago, he would have had an office. Now he works out of his house. We eat at one of my buildings or at his house, and that's just how it's done now. So the idea of having brick and mortar commercial is becoming less common for businesses. And businesses are more concerned about the cost. I do believe, I mentioned in this letter, that the way we can try to develop downtown is through food. And by having restaurants, we can keep more people local eating. Then they're also more likely to use professional services and even retail. Although I think retail is a real reach because it has to almost be something like a frame shop, which I mentioned in here. With a frame shop, you have a combination of services and retail. And that takes it away from being something that you can get at Fred Meyer, Walmart, or Amazon. And so those types of businesses can be viable still. There's not a ton of them, but there's some that could happen. As far as like the small retail shops, I've had several over the years. None of them have succeeded, and they've all been disappointed at the amount of people that would come in the door. And so that's just kind of our situation here. But I think that the basis for downtown could be government combined with food and professional services. And then the food will help bring in at least a little bit of retail. But without that foot traffic and that traffic flow, the retail just can't survive.
So I'd like to speak about my experience real quick. So our company that I own with my wife, we have about 35 employees, which is, it's honest. I think we got above a couple of companies at that size. We started with 2, and we did it in Portland. We lived there, but the thing was 20 years ago. But what we don't have here in Scappoose is stepping stone real estate, where, at least as far as I know, where that if you start with a small space, they need to get bigger, they need to get bigger, they need to get bigger. It's very hard to do that.
I actually have everything from 200 square feet to 2,700 square feet.
Okay.
So I have incubator units that I put in my buildings. And then I move all the way up. And I've had people, all my leases are structured so that you can go bigger or smaller. And I've had several cases. Yeah, she's done it. The photography studio I mentioned, they were going to go out of business, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. And I said, no, we'll get you a smaller space. And we got them a smaller space and they would go around for several years. So there is a stepped approach here. Now, once you get to something, let's say 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, if you wanted something that big, then you're going to be limited. But the problem with 3,000 or 4,000 square feet is that since there's such a limited market here, nobody's going to build it unless you built it yourself.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Yeah.
So we're at 8,000 square feet, and I have friends that have companies or whatever in other areas, and a lot of them started with these commercial buildings, industrial slash, but they're kind of a mixed use type thing with a roll up door. You could do some retail, you could be making a builder space, whatever. You can rent 2,000 square feet, then you take the next one, and so then it's 4, then it's 6, then it's 8, then it's 12. And it's very safe to move in there knowing that you'll have a way to grow. You won't be stuck. I mean, the worst thing from a business aspect is you have employees that have been invested in an area. Let's say, for instance, you create a company that's got 5 people, you really, they're a big part of your business. They live in the community. And then there's no way to get to that next level. And you either have to move the company or you have to, do something else drastic. My question to you as developer is, does something like that just not pencil out here in Scappoose?
Okay, so you actually brought up a bunch of great points. So first, the flex space idea, where it's light industrial with office space and then warehouse space in the back, that is a great concept. And there's some of that up in St. Helens, and it stays rented. So there is a demand for it. The problem with it is because in order for it to really work, you have to have a large piece of land. Because you got to be able to have trucks come and go. And so then it starts being the construction of the building itself, if you want to make it nice, like have air conditioning and heat throughout the entire building, not just in a small office. And you put a thick slab in the warehouse so that they can run full their dog, and those kind of things. To get into that kind of construction, it's going to cost about the same as an office. There's not a tremendous savings. It's a little cheaper, but not a lot. Because you still have to insulate, you have to do all these things once you want to do the heating, you're gonna have bathrooms, you probably have to upgrade the electrical. So I've actually looked at that kind of thing for years, and I've never been able to make it pencil for me here because the cost of land. Because you end up with a smaller building, because you have to be able to have like semis or at least box trucks being able to back in and stuff. So you can't use a standard 60-foot double channel parking. You've got to have a bigger, much bigger space for them to function, or it becomes a cluster. And so it's land intensive. It's a good idea though. And the port has talked about doing some of this on and off over the years, but they've never done it. And we talked about the port, what has been out on, if you remember, but it's been 4, 5, 6 years ago. They were talking about trying to do incubator, that style of thing. Now, the other issue of being able to expand without moving, all my buildings are balloon constructed, meaning that you can remove walls and make things smaller and bigger, which I've done a half a dozen times over the years. The physical therapy people across the street here, they have 2 units. The city of Scappoose, for instance, a couple of units coming over there. But the photography studio I mentioned, they had 2 units and we cut it back to 1. I cut an extra unit out of the far end of the building in Columbia and created an extra space because nobody wanted 1,500 square feet at the time. And so I made it into 1,500 and about 2 businesses there, and there was only 1 business there. So we've done it multiple times. Oh, the John F. Scott building down, well, it used to be the John F. Scott. The brick building down at the far end of the town, by the movie theater, that was actually configured into 2 units, and I made it into 4. So the general trend has been making units smaller, not bigger, because the demand just isn't there. If you wanted to move your company here, you would probably have to build your own building or buy something and basically kick everybody out, because commercial landlords aren't going to build something 4,000 square feet here because there's just not the demand. So they may get you, but if you ever move out, they might be looking at multiple year vacancy.
So like, like we've seen other places in Oregon where these commercial areas, industrial areas, whatever, these flexible spaces have almost become kind of a downtown-ish kind of thing where, or not, maybe like not a city center, but it becomes something that brings people and it allows other businesses to kind of permeate as well. So for instance, if a brewery started and only had 1,000 square feet, it just like continues to go this way. But my question is then, like, there's all this industrial land that we have up here, and that's always seems to be, we're going for big fish. But is there anything that we can do, or does it make any sense that we should make it a priority to have something like this? Or is there any incentives that we can do? Or, I just look at it and go, I've seen them in other areas do well.
So a couple comments on that, and it's a good point. I actually think that's an area, first of all, I think that we've had a problem in Columbia County where we often try to go for the big fish. And the big fish never kind of ends up on a boat, but there are a lot of little fish swimming by that we just kind of say, oh, aren't those pretty? I do think we'd be much better off as a community for economic development if we try to center ourselves more on the small to medium. And there's an old joke of saying, if the hunter only went after lions, starved to death. But you got to go for the bunnies and the lions. And you survive off the bunnies, and if you manage to get a lion, that's a great day. But if you don't get the lion, you're still good, because you've gotten a lot of bunnies. Well, we kind of been going after lions and not going after bunnies in general, is my view. One of the issues coming up, and it's actually very relevant to this, you asked, how can you make this happen? We just got our packet on the 50-year committee. And what we really need is light industrial zoning to make what we're talking about happen. And they're actually taking 60 acres of light industrial land and trying to make it into commercial. And that's going to be a problem, that concept. It also may end up resulting in up to 1,000 apartments being built, which is also a problem. Because I don't know if I else.
Don't they change can't they change the commercial heading to not include apartments?
It doesn't.
Commercial zones allow apartments.
So what we're currently doing is actually going away from what you just wanted, and I think would make sense. You gotta have light industrial land where you have, first of all, nobody's gonna want a sheetrock contractor next to their office. So part of that light industrial situation is you expect a little more noise, you expect it to be a little dirtier, like the brewery. But it doesn't have to be ugly. It can still be really cool, and you expect larger lots. And you do that. Unfortunately, by rezoning that light industrial out of Parker's Pit, they're going to try, part of the plan, they just changed it to making it all commercial, is that will actually incentivize apartments. And somebody could ask me, why do I know it's going to be apartments? It's because, and all of it won't be apartments probably, it's a significant percentage will be because apartments is where the money is. If you're a developer, you build what you can rent, and what makes you the most money. And apartments are just so much more lucrative than commercial, that if you give me a piece of land, and I'm purely looking at it from a profit point of view, I will build apartments over commercial. So that's something for another committee, though I don't have to go into more detail here, but you guys should know about it, because you guys are all economic committee. Christine and I are the only two here that are on the 50-year plan. She's our vice chair. But I'm concerned about that because I don't want, we talked about wanting to keep our ratios in our 50-year plan at about what they are now, which is about 70-30, 70% house owners and 30% apartment dwellers. And that seems to be a good ratio. So over time, we are going to need more apartments. But what would be a bad thing, in my opinion, is if we suddenly became a 50-50. 50% apartments, 50% houses, because apartment dwellers tend to be more transitory. You're going to have less community involvement. We're going to have less stability. We're going to have a declining tax base with increase the services. It's all sorts of problems. And we'll discuss that at our committee. But
My point though is that can some of that be reflected in this document? And, is there some levers that we could pull that says that we understand the need for this light, industrial?
Well, we could adjust our document to say that we'd like to continue to have a sizable amount of light industry. And James, you might be a bit more aware of this than I am. I looked at the documents, we just got them 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was kind of surprising to me because they changed radically from what the last document we had seen. And was there a reason for that?
It's something Scott Barker was interested in. He wanted his land to be commercial, and it's something that Lori and I support because we have such a surplus of industrial land. Even when you look out to the 50-year projection, we have more land than we're projected to develop. And so we thought having that as commercial so that there could be things that support light industrial, like business and retail and things that are more closer to industry. That's why we were pretty supportive when Scott came to us with this.
Well, the problem with that is besides getting 1,000 apartments, which St. Helens got 250, that it didn't work out so well for. Besides that problem, we already have at the airport uses, you allow a variety of commercial uses. So we already have commercial. The main difference between some of the airport uses and commercial is it doesn't allow apartments. So really what we're doing, if we do what you guys are suggesting, is we're creating an opportunity for 1,000 apartments or more.
AJ, I haven't had the opportunity to review my paperwork yet, because the meeting's not until the 20th. But what I remember with Parker's plan is he was creating like a little mini city on his piece to accommodate OMIC. So I would assume that his need for rezoning is based on that premise, and it's not necessarily an apartment. But again, if OMIC takes off in the way that we want it to take off, as far as manufacturing and education and having more people come in that are temporary because they're frequenting OMIC and using that as a facility, we do need that.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And, for a property that's that big, we would want them to master plan it at some point so we can kind of see what the long-term vision is. It's essentially, it doesn't lock them in, but it just shows, hey, I want this to be kind of retail, commercial, some eateries here, some apartments there for more transitory, residents and employees.
Yeah, that's what I understood.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a mix. I would find it really, really hard to imagine that it just going completely to apartments or even 40%, like
Yep.
most of our commercial,
We didn't
for the
really
plan
plan
is projected to go.
Well, then I guess my thought would be is if that's the case, why would we rezone both of them? There's two parcels over there.
Yeah,
And why would we rezone both to commercial? Why would we not leave the one closest to the OMIG Center as light industrial so that OMIG has room to expand? And leave the parcel that's closest to Crown Zeller back, which is more suitable for commercial activities like retail
yeah,
and restaurants and that kind of thing. Make that parcel, commercial. Because by doing both, that back part of it is not going to be very desirable for commercial. It doesn't have good access to anything but the airport, and the airport hasn't taken off. And so
well,
it's
it's going
going
back to Omen too.
Can I bring it back a little bit? This is turning into a 50-year planning meeting.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to be clear, so this document we're reviewing today, we are not making any specific recommendations of actual things to adopt. We've provided a vision for where downtown should be, what kinds of things we think it needs to support, and then we've provided a laundry list of different things council can use in order to get to that end state. Zoning is definitely on there, the right thing. So I guess maybe the first question you'd ask is that, does this group want to actually prepare a package of, this is what we think you specifically need to do to address this? Because that is a whole extra series of meetings and efforts to align this group on a package of things we would recommend.
I was just trying to get to the point that maybe we have to include that light industrial / stepping stone, because right now we don't have it. And we are the economic development committee, and this is supposed to be a strategic plan. And that's where I thought there was just missing after reading the appendix.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And Jay, maybe you can answer this. If I read it correctly, then once we get done with the 50-year plan, I'm not trying to keep filling that, but is the plan. I believe we have almost no light industrial left in town.
No, not
How
true.
many acres? I'm not talking about airport.
I'm
I'm not talking about airport zoning. I'm talking light industrial outside of the various airports.
Well, that is industrial zoning. It allows for industrial and industry uses.
Right, but I guess in the 50-year plan, we had talked about wanting to spread out commercial and industrial throughout the city so that we didn't put all of our eggs in one pot. And it kind of,
We have it, like, if we project 20 or 50 years into the future, we have a deficit of commercial and we have hundreds and hundreds of acres in surplus.
plenty of commercial industrial at the airport. It's not so light industrial.
It allows basically the same uses, manufacturing, all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Research, yeah.
It was just a recommendation based on there that maybe we want to put that in one of our line items. Not in real.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you help me understand exactly where you think I should add something?
Well, it could be under programs, actions, and other dodgeball covers, or because
Encourage incubation through generous application of industrial, sort of light industrial.
well, we need to create somehow we need to create a way for this to come here and like we have this great OMIG thing. Let's say someone learns something and they actually want to stay here and build a business around it. Right now, we don't have that stepping stone way to do it. And I'm sorry.
An incubator there.
My point, I don't think they have like the 10,000 square feet you might need, like eventually, I think you.
There's also an issue with people who own their own facility. they don't necessarily want to, but
Well, quick, no, I was just trying to add, maybe, and I don't know, maybe I'm not, maybe Brian could say it better because he's the developer.
I think AJ partially addressed your concern. He mentioned that there is stuff out at the airport that could be used. I'm concerned a little bit with that location because it's somewhat remote from the highway. And any kind of contractor, any kind of business that deals with moving material is going to want to be close to the highway as possible. Because distance is time, time is money. So people aren't going to want to be, back behind the airport if they're a contractor, a sheet rock contractor.
But that's where we want them.
Yes,
We don't want to see them.
well, we don't want to see them, but we want them to exist. And if you
True,
don't
but we
make-
don't want them on our highway.
no, not necessarily on the highway, but with reasonable access.
I think they have good access.
I'm just telling you.
So I am going to add in the vision section that we talked a lot about what commercial properties are. I'm going to add a little blurb that says something about the vision is we're maintaining an adequate amount of light industrial zoning for, to enable the incubation of businesses.
That sounds great.
And growth. It's already derailed conversation.
No, this is exactly what it's for. That's great. But to see what we're doing, basically, it's like what needs to be done to this, so we can say done, then if to council add the thing they can use to guide themselves.
I will allow you to do it.
There's not much leading other than who has another comment before that we should.
We look at programs, actions, and other levers available. We just kind of go through it one more time.
Sure.
For it.
Is it, do you want to like discuss whether or not they should be on here as a viable lever for
Just somewhat, I mean, I see items on here that are probably not super likely, like eliminate SDCs. It says reduce or eliminate. I would suggest that that's just not viable as the cities is not going to economically be able to.
Yeah, maybe Carl, we could change this to defer SDCs.
defer? Yeah.
Because there has been talk of, and we talked about this at one point, that if we defer the SDCs till completion of construction,
Yes.
it allows them to finance as a finished product versus trying to get a construction loan. So if they're trying to pay cash to build it with the idea they'll finance it later, it makes it more affordable to build. So I like what your thought there, Jay. That's a good one. Tax abatement programs. What are your thoughts, NJ?
I mean, I would lean more towards deferral. Than any kind of elimination. I mean. Because right now we're collecting barely anything in taxes on it, right, on the land right now. And so if we let them get settled for 3 or 5 years or whatever it is, it's feasible. It's something we can look into.
Has the city had any tax abatements that actually worked as a positive? That anyone's aware of?
I don't know.
I know like the enterprise zone exists, but the Columbia Economic Team manages that.
The enterprise. They've only had one project, right? Cascade Tissue, as far as I know.
I think so.
Yeah, Boost, it's got Boost. So we haven't had great success with that, but we already have that program. And so it's available.
Doesn't it expire?
It's not citywide though. The line is.
Yeah, it's not citywide. You're right about that. There's a border. It's mostly around the airport and industrial.
No, that's good. You want it to be kind of targeted.
Yeah. So I guess. We have that program, I guess. I don't know. If we
Because it seems to me that if a business is gonna locate
It's,
here.
it needs to be industrial versus economic.
we have something special.
Yeah,
It's because, well, like I said, I can tell you about personal experience. I had a sleep like the cycle for about 8 years. And they were here for dollars. They did steel deals all over the world. And two guys that were doing this business. Why were they here? They were here because they lived here. They were here because they like riding horses. Right. So,
We've heard that before, there's also, I mean, that just goes back to, you know, well, look at our amenities, for instance, well, amenities are important because someone lets her ride a horse, or someone's daughter's into softball, we have a lot of softball fields, or whatever. That's
how you have to.
Yes, exactly, it's how it goes.
And what pays for this amenities?
Well, ultimately, our taxes,
That's right.
so we don't have a tax abatement. I think the existing programs we have are sufficient.
Jeanette, would you want to chime in? So you got your hand raised.
Yes, few things. Because maybe the way the camera is placed, we're able to hear the conversation that is being held near the computer or and so we can't really hear when they're talking and then you guys are talking. So as it is, it's already a little bit muffled or echoey. And my question is, since I have the floor right now, some of their suggestions are you guys, and you guys indicated, is there any ideas, like, for example, if you're talking about a program, let's just say you said here, it says funding, process liaison will help find capital and navigating through the AHJ processes. When you bringing up a possible program or idea, is there implementation? Like, are you guys going to be one of the liaison? Can that be called out? Like, who do you guys plan? Is it something that you expect staff to take over, etc.?
Today, we are not going to make any specific recommendations for how and what you should actually do and who does it. Today, what we're developing is simply a vision and information about how we can go about doing this. I think all of those specifics happen with council involvement. And again, they can come back to us and we can support some of the parts and pieces of what the entire plan, but there needs to be a holistic plan, not just one, this, that, or the other thing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Carl.
So the question I think on the table is, should I strike tax abatement programs as a lever available to council to try to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to leave something there that says you utilize existing tax abatement programs, but I don't think.
New ones or.
I think this is about plan itself.
Just look at this, because it exists.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I couldn't understand.
I just think leave it because it exists.
Yeah.
We're not getting additional,
So you want to leave it like this?
because it already exists.
You can yell at them if they try to do something done with it. What else you got?
I don't know. The rest seems fine to me. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts.
Carl, when you say city-led or PPP, is that public-private partnership?
Yeah, do you want me to spell that out? Is that not common enough that?
I had a guess, but didn't know.
I'm sorry, where's that?
PPP.
Oh, city-led or PPP developments. I actually do not like PPPs. Usually the government pays for it, and the private takes the profit.
I don't disagree with you, but it is something other communities we've seen utilize as something they put into place, and it is technically a lever.
Yeah, I think I would prefer not to have, city-led's fine, but PPP is, I think, is opening up a can of worms where the city ends up, with that situation potentially.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into details because it's an active one right now, but we've had, people request for public-private partnerships and it's just not an advantageous position for us.
Okay. So,
Because in addition to money too, it's like the workload and staff time and, we're doing the coordination and getting these loans with the state and it's, it's great for the community, but it's really, really great for the private entity.
I have seen situations where it can be beneficial and not at a disadvantage to the city too, though. It just all depends on how you put the partnership together. I know Gresham likes to brag about their public-private partnership that they did.
that's the one that landed this on the list.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about it all day long. The city is very happy with it. The developers are happy with it. The citizens are happy with it. And it really was, I mean, I haven't dug into all the details of finance or anything. Obviously, there's incentive for everybody to do it, but it provided something that there was no way they're gonna have it otherwise. But it wasn't the city giving it all away either. I think they lease out the land instead or something. I mean, there was like something, I went through a presentation one time, I don't remember the details, so I'm not gonna have it on permanent record. I just know that they had success with it. So it might be an example that we could look at. Once again, these are possible levers. It would
Right.
need to be, maybe if that was on there, to make sure that it's not just a money grab for a developer. But also developers are developers, they're people that want incentives. Obviously that an incentive gives them a little bit more than they would have done otherwise. They want to make that profit. So it need to be reasonable, not at the expense of the taxpayers, but
It's worth mentioning that all these levers that if you don't use them in the right way.
Right.
I think Scappoose would need to be really careful with public-private partnerships, because where I'm from in Indiana, I've seen a lot of them spectacularly fail, cities left holding back.
Well, Rainier is a great example of that. Rainier was basically bankrupted by the gypsum plant out there. They have the highest taxes, they're under compression, they've been under compression forever because they signed on to the gypsum plant and they got financially hooked on it as a public-private partnership under the hopes and dreams of large-scale employment, and it basically bankrupted the city.
So I think I'm hearing leave it on there, but I'll add a note to pursue those with extreme caution.
Other than that, I'm good at it.
Well then, what I'd like to propose, and Jay, I'm asking you because this is the right for my procedural timeline is I'll make these edits, send it out, we can do a final thumbs up at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And at that point, if anybody wants to change, they would need to propose a specific red line strikeout as part of the motion to approve it,
Yeah.
right?
Does the committee think that our vision, especially for the downtown core, is specific enough? I've had problems with that for a long.
What page are you on?
Page 2. I mean,
So, I mean, we spent a long time talking about this, and I think there's not. Like, I don't think there's enough agreement here to be able to draw a line specifically around where it is, but I think we maintained that agreement that this area needs to be the hub on this side of the street. Yeah, the trickles, what we're talking about, the trickles over the other side of 30, that's fine, but all of the focus should be more on this specific area.
I think just from a development standpoint though, First Street on the other side of the highway has a lot of potential because there's land over there that doesn't already have, either it has small houses on it with some larger lots, or it has some vacant land. And First Street on the other side of the highway does have a lot of potential. Over here, on this side, we still have potential. I mean, that corner there is really important. That could be awesome. But there's more land over there. And so when I look at that, I think, well, that's potential.
well, I guess the way I've always felt about the downtown here is there needed to be a master plan. And there never was one, so there's no coherent development.
But we do have a downtown overlay.
Yeah,
And we're supposed to be working on that soon. And that, in theory, we could get into more detail there.
We're submitting a grant for it.
So in theory, we could resolve some of that.
but for having a walkable downtown, I mean, you need some kind of coherence with business that people want to go to, like,
Right.
actually like St. Helens is developing into now. And the way stuff's spread out, you've got like this little floor here where you can walk around, although it's mostly government professional. And then you've got tiny strip malls that kind of peter out down the road. And they're not really walkable.
So what would you like to see?
I would think you'd want to have a block by block development plan so that if we would tear down like some of these buildings, that there would be a coherent theme to what goes up in this place.
I think we're all aligned that that level of detail of a plan, along with the programs that need to be put in place to support and make that happen, needs to be developed. And I believe, Lori's not here, but that is really what her initiative that she's leading this year is meant to go down the path of developing. That is not something we have been prepared to tackle as this group. And in fact, it is now in the hands of, we don't want to, and I think we're at her disposal as she goes forward doing that. She was here to speak. And Jared, am I saying anything that's?
No, 100% accurate. Once we get that plan going, whether it's through a grant or the city in a year or two sets aside some money to do it, you all will be like the primary focus group for that project.
We spent a year trying to get here where we are today,
Right.
and that kicked off though, I think what Lori.
Yeah.
You are gonna be working on, before it wasn't even on the radar. So, but we're not the 100% experts, but we wanna be involved in the process.
And we have no authority yet. So.
Right.
It's already been recommended.
But you're at, that's what we're hoping comes from this, poking it like, this is what we need to do, you guys, like, let's make a focused effort on what a downtown looks like.
A plan. Lynn would be so happy.
Great.
Brian. Look at those houses.
Right.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion or anything,
No,
just
no.
go discuss it. What's we're doing? Nothing, am I doing nothing?
No, you.
Are you sure?
Tell you, I was late.
Okay. Very good. NJ forgot to bring you that. Next meeting is June 26th, July 17th, August 21st. I think that July one was the third week for some reason, but I think we moved it for a reason.
That was June.
Oh, June, we moved it out one.
Yeah, June was on Juneteenth, and so we're moving it out.
That's right. Fun Festival, end of May. E30 Square. And Farmers Market is going again, if you haven't noticed, it's 9 to 2 every Saturday. Yeah.
Birthday.
Birthday?
Oh, pretty much the same as last year, so we had about 1,000 people and they came and helped us plant 86, I think, plant along the CZ Mill, which I think I'm by this year. And, clean up highway busy. And then we had a party hopefully in the park afterwards.
Great job.
It was a nice event. I was impressed.
Anybody else? Good. Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, cool.
Carl, would you